A polite smile is one of the most misunderstood languages in the world. It is often mistaken for happiness, for confidence, for a life that feels complete. But sometimes, it is neither a celebration nor a shield. It is a quiet disguise for a loneliness that never learned how to speak. Some people smile the way others breathe, not because they feel light, but because it is the safest place to hide what feels too heavy. Behind certain smiles lie unsent messages, unanswered questions, and a tired heart that learned early how to survive by being easy to be around. The world applauds those who look okay. It rarely pauses for those who are not. And so, loneliness learns a new language. One made of good manners, gentle laughter, and eyes that never ask to be seen too closely. Chapter 1: When Smiles. There are people who learn early that certain emotions make others uncomfortable. Grief that lingers too long. Silence that feels too heavy. Questions with no clean answers. So they learn something else instead. They learn the language of pleasantness, the careful curve of the lips, the practiced brightness in the voice, the art of appearing fine, even when nothing inside feels settled. The polite smile becomes a passcode. It allows entry into conversations, into gatherings, into rooms where sadness is not invited unless it can explain itself quickly. For many, smiling is not an expression. It is an adaptation. A way to move through the world without becoming a burden, without inviting concern, without disturbing the fragile atmosphere of everything is okay. Over time, the smile begins to arrive before the feeling does. It becomes automatic, reflexive, a rehearsal for safety. And slowly, something else fades into the background. Emotional truth. Not because it disappears, but because it is no longer practiced. There is a quiet cost to this performance. A soft, unnamed loneliness that grows in places where honesty was never welcomed. It is the loneliness of being seen as warm, but never as real. Of being liked, but not known. Some laugh easily in rooms where they feel invisible. They tell stories while feeling unheard. They offer warmth while quietly freezing inside. The world, after all, rewards brightness. It makes room for pleasantness. It responds to ease. But it does not always know what to do with those who carry storms behind their eyes. So the storm learns to whisper. It learns to wait. It learns not to trouble the sky. And the person behind the smile becomes fluent in the unsaid. They become skilled at emotional translation, turning confusion into conversation, turning ache into courtesy, turning longing into laughter. What begins as protection becomes a prison, because eventually the smile grows louder than the soul. And there comes a moment, often quiet, often late, when even the mirror feels distant. A face that looks calm, eyes that look polite, a heart that feels 1,000 miles away from being touched honestly. This is not deception. It is survival. It is the body choosing visibility over vulnerability, safety over truth, belonging over being. But beneath every flawless performance lives a small, tired hope that one day the world will make room for a face that does not try so hard, for a person who no longer translates pain into something acceptable, for a smile that means nothing more and nothing less than exactly what is felt. Chapter 2: The Birth of. Long before the smile became instinct, before it arrived automatically, before it knew how to soften every moment, there was a beginning. Not a sudden one, not a dramatic one, but a quiet series of small understandings. A child notices which emotions receive warmth, and which receive silence, which tears invite comfort, and which interrupt adult conversations, which fears are met with patience, and which are brushed aside with laughter and distraction. Slowly, a lesson forms without ever being spoken. Some parts of the self belong, and others do not. Some feelings open doors, others close them. And so the heart begins sorting itself, organizing its emotions for safety. Joy is shown. Sadness is softened. Anger is hidden. Need is disguised as independence. Not because the child wants to deceive, but because the child wants to remain close. Connection becomes conditional, and authenticity becomes dangerous. Over time, the young soul grows fluent in emotional mathematics. It learns how much personality is too much, how much sensitivity is too sensitive, how much silence is acceptable, before it becomes a problem to solve. The disguise does not arrive all at once. It grows the way coral forms, layer by layer, unnoticed, slowly becoming structure. By adolescence, the smile is no longer a choice. It is architecture. A face carefully designed to survive classrooms, friendships, disappointments, and the strange loneliness of trying to be enough, without knowing what enough actually looks like. For some, the mask forms in families, where emotions were treated like inconveniences, in homes where praise was rare, but performance was rewarded. For others, it grows in environments where vulnerability was met with ridicule, where softness became a liability, where needing too much became a joke that never quite faded. And so a person begins to rehearse their acceptability. They edit their emotions before they are spoken. They anticipate reactions before they risk honesty. They learn to read rooms more than they read themselves. Eventually, the smile stops being emotional. It becomes strategic. Not to manipulate, but to survive silently. Not to pretend, but to belong. And this is where loneliness does not scream. It sinks. It nests quietly beneath competence, beneath charm, beneath likability. The world does not see it coming. Not because it hides well, but because it learned to become what the world wanted most. Someone easy. Someone bright. Someone who never asks to be held where it hurts. Chapter 3: What Psychology Reveals. Psychology has a quiet name for the polite smile that carries too much. Emotional masking. It is the mental habit of presenting one feeling while living inside another. And it is far more common than it appears. The human nervous system is not designed only for comfort. It is designed for survival. When emotional expression leads to rejection, ridicule, or neglect, the brain begins to protect in subtle ways. It does not shut down completely. It adapts. It learns which emotions are safe to display, and which bring risk. So the mind creates a version of the self that can safely walk through social worlds. This version is agreeable, manageable, predictable. Neurologically, this pattern becomes a loop. When a person smiles through discomfort, the brain releases small reinforcements of relief. Nothing exploded, no one pulled away, the moment passed. Over time, the body starts associating emotional suppression with safety, not satisfaction. Safety. And safety becomes addictive. This is where surface connection replaces intimacy. Conversations stay polite. Emotions stay edited. Relationships feel present, but not close. The person may be surrounded by people and still experience internal isolation. Psychologists call this social loneliness. The absence of emotional resonance despite social availability. It is not the lack of people. It is the lack of being deeply felt by anyone. There is also the concept of false self-behavior. When identity slowly reorganizes itself around what is acceptable rather than what is authentic. Over time, the real self becomes quiet. Not gone. Just unattended. And what is not attended to begins to ache. Often, those who suffer this loneliness are the least likely to appear lonely. They are reliable, kind, emotionally intelligent. They ask questions about others. They listen well, because they learned long ago how to take up very little emotional space. The irony is gentle and cruel. The better someone becomes at emotional masking, the harder it becomes for anyone to recognize their loneliness at all. Not even themselves sometimes. It does not feel like sadness. It feels like a subtle absence. like eating without tasting, like speaking without being echoed. A life full of sounds, and no place to rest them. And so psychology does not call this condition dramatic. It calls it quiet. A form of separation that requires no distance. A solitude that exists, even in the gentlest company. Chapter 4: The Quiet War Inside. There is a battle that makes no sound. No raised voices. No slammed doors. No visible collapse. It unfolds entirely within. On the surface, life continues. Messages are answered. Laughter is offered at the right moments. Responsibilities are handled with quiet competence. But beneath that ease, something strains. It is the tension between who is presented and who is present. Between the version of the self that performs adulthood gracefully and the one that quietly wonders when it became so exhausting to exist. This internal war is not violent. It is subtle. It is the daily negotiation between what is felt and what is allowed. Every withheld sigh, every edited thought, every emotion redirected into politeness. When feelings are repeatedly interrupted, they do not disappear. They accumulate. The body keeps its own record. Tight shoulders, clenched jaws, sleepless nights with no obvious enemy. Emotional suppression does not fade into nothing. It transforms into tiredness without explanation, irritability without source, a hollow heaviness that refuses a name. Inside, the person begins to feel divided. There is the one who smiles, and the one who watches from behind that smile. One performs life. The other quietly endures it. Often there is guilt. Guilt for feeling alone while being surrounded. Guilt for wanting connection while appearing complete. Guilt for feeling ungrateful when life looks fine from the outside. And so the loneliness becomes layered. There is loneliness for not being seen, loneliness for not being known, and loneliness for feeling wrong, for needing any of that at all. Some nights, the smile dissolves completely. In the dark, there is no audience. No reason to translate emotion. No need to appear. Just a person finally allowed to feel everything, and not knowing where to put it. This is where the war grows loudest. Not with noise, but with ache. The quiet kind. The kind that settles into bone. Where the greatest fear is not being hurt, but being forgotten emotionally. And yet, even here, the person rarely reaches out. Because vulnerability once taught them that honesty has consequences. Because they learned young that staying easy kept them close to love. And so they keep choosing composure over communion, control over closeness. The war has no winners, only survivors, who grow very good at pretending they are not tired. Chapter 5: The Moment That Cracks. There comes a time when even the strongest facade begins to tire. Not dramatically, not all at once, but in small, unfamiliar ways. The smile starts arriving late. Laughter feels further away than usual. Social spaces that once felt manageable begin to feel impossibly loud. It is rarely one event. It is accumulation. The weight of every swallowed feeling, every unspoken need, every moment of being fine while feeling anything but. Eventually, the nervous system grows weary of carrying what the voice never did. The body begins to speak in its own language. Exhaustion that sleep does not fix. Tears that arrive without invitation. A sadness with no obvious story. This is not weakness. It is serration. The emotional cup, once carefully managed, begs to overflow in private. A person may notice themselves withdrawing, not out of disinterest, but out of depletion.